Smile, Jess. Don't let them see you cry. You belong to me now.
The words were whispered into the shell of her ear, warm and sickly sweet, hidden beneath the roar of 100 camera shutters clicking in unison. To the world watching from behind the velvet ropes, it looked like an intimate moment between two grieving souls finding comfort in each other. A protective fiancé whispering words of encouragement to his overwhelmed partner. But Jessica knew the truth. It wasn't comfort, it was a command. She forced the corners of her mouth to lift, the muscle memory of a smile fighting against the nausea roiling in her stomach. The flashbulbs popped like blinding white lightning, disorienting her, turning the ballroom of the Grand Seoul Hotel into a stroboscopic nightmare. Liam's hand was a heavy weight on the small of her back, his fingers digging into the silk of her gold gown just hard enough to bruise, a silent reminder of the leash he held. "You're doing great, darling," Liam murmured, turning to flash his dazzling, magazine cover smile at the press. He waved, the picture of the benevolent tech mogul, the golden boy who had stepped up to save the company, and the girl, after his partner's tragic fall from grace. They moved through the crowd like royalty parting a sea of admirers. Champagne glasses clinked, laughter rang out, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and hypocrisy. Everyone here knew Yi-min. Most of them had drunk his whiskey, shaken his hand, and begged him for favors. Now, barely a month after his arrest, they were toasting to his erasure. Jessica felt like she was floating outside her own body. The gold dress Liam had chosen for her, he chose everything now, felt like molten metal poured over her skin, beautiful but suffocating. She caught glimpses of herself in the mirrors lining the hall. She looked stunning. She looked expensive. She looked dead. So Jessica, a reporter with a microphone thrust into her face, asked, blocking their path, "It's been a whirlwind month. How are you coping with everything? The scandal, the transition?" Liam answered before she could even draw breath. "She's incredibly resilient," Liam said, pulling Jessica closer into his side until her ribs ached. "It's been difficult, of course. Finding out that someone you trusted was compromised. It shakes your worldview, but we have each other. We're focusing on the future." "And Yi-min," the reporter pressed, hungry for a soundbite. "Have there been any updates on his trial?" Liam's smile didn't falter, but his eyes went flat and cold, a shark surfacing in blue water. "He's where he belongs," Liam said smoothly. "The justice system is handling it. We prefer not to speak of the dead. We're focused on the living." He steered Jessica away before any follow-up questions could be asked. As soon as they were out of earshot, his grip on her waist tightened painfully. "You hesitated," he hissed, his voice dropping the public persona instantly. "I didn't," Jessica whispered, keeping her eyes on the floor. "You looked at the camera like a frightened deer. It makes me look weak, Jess. Do I look weak to you?" "No, Liam." "Good, then fix your face. We have donors to charm." Dragged her toward a table of investors, and Jessica led him. She had learned in the last 30 days that fighting Liam was like fighting quicksand. The more she struggled, the faster she sank. He had isolated her completely. Her phone was monitored. Her movements were tracked. Her friends were blocked. He had spun a narrative to the world that she was fragile, traumatized by Yi-min's crimes, and that he was her savior. If she screamed for help, he would just tell everyone she was having another episode. She took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, not to drink, but to have something to hold on to. She looked out at the sea of smiling faces and felt a profound, crushing loneliness. They saw the glitter. They didn't see the cage. And miles away, in the darkest corner of the city, the man who held the key to her heart was rotting in a cage of iron and stone. The Seoul high-security penitentiary didn't smell like champagne and perfume. It smelled of rust, unwashed bodies, and the metallic tang of despair. It was a place designed to break men, to strip them of their humanity until they were nothing but numbers in a system. Yi-min sat on the edge of his cot in solitary confinement. His cell was a concrete box, 6 feet by 8 feet, damp and freezing. He wore the standard gray uniform, the fabric coarse against his skin, a stark contrast to the bespoke suits he had worn for the last decade. He had been here for 4 weeks. Most men in his position, a billionaire CEO stripped of his assets, his reputation, and his freedom, would have broken in the first 48 hours. They would have screamed, cried, bargained, and eventually withered. Yi Min hadn't said a word since the doors clanged shut. He sat in the lotus position, his eyes closed, breathing rhythmically. He wasn't meditating to find peace. He was meditating to conserve energy. He was cataloging every sound in the prison block, the squeak of the guards' boots, the rhythmic dripping of a leaking pipe, the muffled whispers of the inmates in the cells next door. He wasn't fighting for survival. He was fighting for time. They had tried to break him, of course. Liam had been thorough. The guards on the night shift were paid double to ensure Yi Min didn't sleep. They banged on the bars every hour. They forgot his meals. They turned the temperature down until his breath misted in the air. But Liam had made a critical miscalculation. He thought Yi Min was a businessman playing at being a gangster. He had forgotten that Yi Min had been a gangster long before he put on a suit. Liam was born in a penthouse. Yi Min was born in the gutter. This concrete box wasn't a punishment. It was a return to the forge. The sound of the electronic lock buzzing made his eyes snap open. It wasn't mealtime. It wasn't exercise time. The heavy steel door slid open. 3 men stepped inside. They weren't guards. They were inmates, wearing the general population orange. They were big, scarred, and holding shanks made from sharpened toothbrushes and melted plastic. The guard who had opened the door stood in the hallway, looking the other way, whistling a tuneless melody. Liam's money at work. The largest of the 3, a man with a spider web tattoo covering his face, stepped forward, grinning to reveal rotting teeth. "The Prince of Seoul," he sneered. "You look smaller without your bodyguards." Yi Min stood up slowly. He didn't rush. He unfolded his limbs with a fluid grace that made the small cell feel suddenly crowded. He rolled his neck, the bones cracking loudly in the silence. "Who paid you?" Yi Min asked. His voice was rough from disuse, scraping like sandpaper over stone, but it held no fear. "Doesn't matter," Spiderweb said, raising his shank. "The order is to make it look like a suicide. But we're gonna have some fun first." He lunged. It was a clumsy attack born of arrogance. He expected a soft businessman. He expected fear. Yi Min stepped inside the man's guard, moving faster than a man of his size should be able to move. He caught the wrist holding the shank, his grip crushing. There was a sickening snap of bone. Spiderweb screamed, dropping the weapon. Yi Min didn't stop. He spun, driving his elbow into the man's throat, collapsing his windpipe. Spiderweb dropped to the floor, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The other 2 hesitated. The predator they had come to kill had just turned into the monster in the dark. Yi Min looked at them. His eyes were black voids. The tattoo on his neck, usually hidden by a collar, was fully visible now, the dragon seemingly writhing as the muscles in his neck tensed. "You have 2 choices," Yi Min said, his voice deadly calm. "You can join him on the floor, or you can tell me exactly how much Liam Sterling paid you, and I will double it." The men looked at their fallen leader, then at Yi Min. They looked at the dragon. They realized in that moment that the rumors were true. You couldn't cage a dragon, you just made him angry. One of the men dropped his shank. It clattered loudly on the concrete. 10,000, the man whispered. "He paid us 10,000 each." Yi Min nodded. "Cheap." He walked over to the open door, stepping over the gasping man on the floor. He looked at the guard who was still pretending not to hear anything. "Officer," Yi Min said. The guard jumped, spinning around. He expected to see Yi Min bleeding out. Instead, he saw the inmate standing tall, unharmed, radiating an aura of terrifying authority. "Open the account," Yi Min said. "I'm making a deposit." Jessica stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the penthouse, looking out at the city she used to love. From up here, the cars looked like toys, the people like ants. It was raining again, the drops trailing down the glass like tears she refused to shed. It had been 3 weeks since the gala. 3 weeks of playing the role of the devoted, healing fiancé. She heard the elevator ding. Liam was home. Her heart rate spiked, a Pavlovian response of fear, but she forced her breathing to remain even. She turned away from the window, smoothing the front of her silk dress. "Hey, babe," Liam called out, tossing his keys onto the console table. He walked into the living room, loosening his tie. He looked tired but triumphant. He smelled of scotch and another woman's perfume, something floral and cheap. Jessica noted it, filed it away, and didn't react. "Hi, Liam," she said softly. "How was the board meeting?" He groaned, flopping onto the sofa and stretching his arms out along the back. "Boring. Old men arguing about ethics. They don't understand that to build an empire, you have to break a few eggs. Come here." Jessica walked over. She sat next to him, careful to leave a few inches of space, but close enough to satisfy him. He reached out and pulled her into his side, burying his face in her neck. "You smell good," he mumbled. "Did you miss me?" Jessica closed her eyes. Every fiber of her being wanted to shove him away, to scream, to run. But she remembered the last time she had fought him. She remembered the threats against her parents. She remembered him telling her that Yi Min would die in prison if she didn't behave. "Yes," she lied. The word tasted like ash. "Good girl," Liam said, kissing her cheek. He pulled back, looking at her with those deceptive blue eyes. "I have a surprise for you." Jessica's stomach churned. A surprise usually meant a piece of jewelry she didn't want, bought with money stolen from Yi Min's company. "What is it?" Liam reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. He opened it. Inside sat a ring. It wasn't just a ring, it was a shackle. A massive, flawless diamond set in platinum. It was gaudy, ostentatious, and cold. "We're announcing the engagement officially on Friday," Liam said, beaming. "A private party here at the penthouse. Just 50 of our closest friends." Jessica stared at the ring. It blurred in her vision. Engagement. It was the final nail in the coffin. Once she wore that ring, the world would see her as his property. "It's beautiful, Liam," she whispered, her voice trembling. He took her hand and slid the ring onto her finger. It felt heavy. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "It fits perfectly," he said, satisfied. "Now you really belong to me." He leaned in to kiss her, and Jessica let him. She went limp, a doll in his arms, waiting for it to be over. When he finally pulled away, he looked at her with a strange expression, half suspicion, half arrogance. "You've been so quiet lately, Jess. You're not plotting anything, are you?" Jessica shook her head, forcing a sad smile. "No, Liam, I'm just tired. I've accepted it. You won, Yi Min is gone, I just want peace." Liam studied her for a long moment. He was looking for the fire she used to have, the defiance. But Jessica had buried it deep, hidden under layers of apathy. "Good," Liam said, relaxing. "That's all I ever wanted, Jess, for us to be happy." He stood up. "I'm going to take a shower, order us some dinner, Thai." "Thai sounds great." Liam walked toward the master bedroom, whistling. Jessica waited until she heard the water running. Then she moved. The apathy vanished instantly, her eyes sharpened. She stood up and walked silently to where Liam had tossed his jacket. She patted the pockets. Nothing. She checked his briefcase. Locked. She looked around the room, her mind racing. Liam had become careless lately. He thought he had broken her. He thought she was a shell. She spotted it. His phone. Not his main phone. He kept that on him always. But the burner phone. The sleek black device he used for his sensitive business. He had left it on the kitchen island, next to his untouched glass of water. She walked over, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought it would crack them. She picked it up. Locked, passcode required. She bit her lip. She tried his birthday. Incorrect. She tried the date of the merger. Incorrect. She closed her eyes, thinking. Liam was a narcissist. His codes wouldn't be random. They would be about him, or about his victory. She typed in the date of Yi Min's arrest. The screen unlocked. Jessica let out a shaky breath. She tapped the messages icon. Her hands were trembling so badly she almost dropped the device. She scrolled past the messages with drug dealers and fixers. She found a thread with a contact named Warden. "Liam, is it done?" "Warden, we tried. He's difficult. He broke 3 of my men." "Liam, I don't pay you for excuses. I pay you for a corpse. Make it happen, tonight. Stage a riot if you have to." "Warden, a riot costs extra." "Liam, double. Just burn the block down. I want him dead before the engagement party." Jessica gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tonight. He was going to kill him tonight. She quickly scrolled up. taking photos of the conversation with her mind, memorizing the numbers, the dates, the admission of guilt. She needed to send this to someone. But who? Liam controlled the police. He controlled the narrative. She heard the water stop running. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded her veins. She quickly locked the phone and placed it back exactly where it had been, wiping her fingerprint off the screen with her sleeve. She turned around just as Liam walked out of the bedroom, a towel wrapped around his waist, water dripping from his hair. He looked at her, he looked at the phone on the counter, he looked back at her. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low. Jessica's heart stopped. She forced her body to relax, picking up the glass of water next to the phone. "I was just getting a drink," she said, taking a sip. Her hand was steady. She was acting for her life. "And I ordered the pad thai. It should be here in 20 minutes. Liam stared at her, the silence stretched, thin and brittle as glass. He walked over to her, his bare feet silent on the floor. He reached past her and picked up the phone. He checked the screen. It was locked. He looked at her again, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Good, I'm starving." He kissed her forehead, unaware that the woman standing in front of him wasn't a broken doll anymore. She was a ticking time bomb. The riot started at midnight. It began in Block C, a orchestrated chaos of burning mattresses and screaming men. Smoke filled the corridors, thick and acrid. The alarms blared, a deafening siren that vibrated in the teeth. In solitary confinement, the power was cut. Yi Min sat in the darkness. He could smell the smoke. He could hear the screams of men dying. He knew this was it, Liam's endgame. The electronic lock on his cell clicked open, not because of a system failure, but because someone had overridden it. Yi Min stood up. He cracked his knuckles. At the end of the hallway, through the haze of smoke, 4 guards appeared. They were wearing riot gear, helmets, and carrying batons. They weren't here to quell a riot. They were here to execute a prisoner. "Target located," one of them said, his voice distorted by the gas mask. Yi Min didn't retreat to the back of the cell. He stepped out into the hallway. The red emergency lights bathed him in the color of blood. He looked like a demon rising from the pit. "Gentlemen," Yi Min said calmly, "you're making a mistake." "Get on the ground," the lead guard shouted, raising a shotgun. Yi Min didn't get on the ground. He whistled, a sharp, piercing sound. From the shadows of the cells behind the guards, movement erupted. 6 inmates, the toughest men in the block, men Yi Min had spent the last month buying, converting, and commanding, stepped out. They were armed with makeshift weapons, but more importantly, they were armed with loyalty to the new king of the cell block. The guards spun around, realizing too late that they were flanked. "I wouldn't do that," Yi Min said. The guards hesitated. They looked at the angry inmates, then at Yi Min. "Liam pays you a salary," Yi Min said, walking forward slowly. "I can pay you a retirement. Put the guns down." The lead guard looked at his men. He looked at the riot raging downstairs. He looked at the calm, terrifying certainty in Yi Min's eyes. He lowered the shotgun. "Smart choice," Yi Min said. "Now, I have a phone call to make." The engagement party was a spectacle of excess. The penthouse had been transformed into a winter wonderland of white roses and crystal ice sculptures. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The city's elite were there, drinking Liam's champagne, eating his caviar, and whispering about the tragedy of the woman standing by his side. Jessica wore white. It felt like a shroud. She stood next to Liam, who was holding court, laughing at a joke made by a senator. He had his hand on her waist, his thumb rubbing circles into her skin. He checked his watch. He was waiting for a call, the call that would confirm Yi Min was dead. "Everyone," Liam called out, tapping a spoon against his glass. The room went silent. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight," Liam began, his voice thick with emotion. "It's been a hard year, but tonight is about new beginnings. Tonight is about love conquering darkness." He turned to Jessica, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Jessica," he said, raising his voice so the room could hear, "you have been my rock, my light, and I want to spend the rest of my life protecting you." He reached for her hand, the one with the ring. Jessica felt like she was going to vomit. She looked at the door, praying for a miracle, praying that the text she had managed to send to Yi Min's lawyer from the burner phone had worked. Liam pulled her hand up to his lips. "I love you," he said. The lights went out. Not just the dimming of a switch. The entire penthouse plunged into absolute pitch darkness. The music cut out with a dying whine. Gasps rippled through the room. "What's going on?" Liam snapped, his voice tight. "Security." There was no answer. Then, a sound cut through the darkness. Ding! The elevator. The emergency lights flickered on, casting the room in a ghostly, low-voltage glow. All eyes turned to the private elevator doors at the far end of the room. They slid open slowly. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Standing in the elevator was a man. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He was wearing a prison-issue gray t-shirt and dark trousers. He was covered in soot. There was a split in his lip and fresh blood on his knuckles. But it was the tattoo that everyone stared at. The dragon on his neck, exposed, vibrant, and terrifying. Yi Min stepped out. He didn't look like a victim. He didn't look like a fugitive. He looked like the reckoning. Liam dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Yi," Liam whispered, his face draining of all color. You're supposed to be." "Dead." Yi Min finished the sentence for him. His voice was a low growl that carried across the silent room. He walked forward. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea, terrified. Security guards, men who had been loyal to Liam, stepped aside, bowing their heads. They knew who the real power was. Yi Min stopped 10 feet from Liam. He looked at his best friend. He looked at the ring on Jessica's finger. His eyes darkened. "Yi Min," Liam stammered, holding his hands up. I can explain, I was just protecting her." "Protecting her," Yi Min repeated flatly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone, Liam's burner phone. He tossed it onto the floor at Liam's feet. "The police have the rest," Yi Min said. "The witness you paid to frame me just confessed. The warden you paid to burn me alive is currently in handcuffs. And you." Yi Min took another step. "You are finished." Liam looked at the phone, then at the guests who were staring at him with horror. His mask crumbled. The golden boy vanished, leaving only a cornered rat. "Security," Liam screamed. "Get him out of here. He's an escaped convict." No one moved. Yi Min looked at Jessica. For the first time, his expression softened. The rage evaporated, replaced by a profound, aching relief. "Jessica," he said softly. Jessica didn't wait. She ripped her hand away from Liam. She ran. She collided with Yi Min, burying her face in his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, lifting her off her feet, burying his face in her hair. He smelled of smoke and blood, but to her, he smelled like freedom. "I've got you," he whispered against her ear. "I've got you." Liam watched them, his face twisting into a mask of pure hate. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small pistol. "If I can't have her," Liam screamed, raising the gun. "No one can." The guests screamed. Yi Min didn't let go of Jessica. He spun her around, shielding her body with his own, turning his back to the gun. But the shot never came. A single gunshot rang out from the balcony. Liam dropped the gun, clutching his shoulder, screaming in agony. From the shadows of the terrace, the head of security stepped out, his weapons smoking. He looked at Liam with disgust. "I work for the dragon," the guard said, "not the snake." Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. The spell was broken. Yi Min turned back to look at Liam, who was writhing on the floor, bleeding onto his white carpet. Yi Min didn't approach him. He didn't kick him. He didn't need to. He looked down at the man who had been his brother. "You asked for a war, Liam," Yi Min said, his voice cold as ice. "Now you have one, but you forgot one thing." Yi Min reached out and wiped a tear from Jessica's cheek. "I saw her first, and I will always see her last." He picked Jessica up, carrying her bridal style past the stunned crowd, past the bleeding traitor, and toward the elevator. "Where are we going?" Jessica whispered, clinging to him. "Home," Yi Min said, pressing a kiss to her forehead, "to burn the rest of the world down." The elevator doors closed, shutting out the chaos, leaving them alone in the quiet dark, together at last. Liam thinks the police are his biggest problem right now. He has no idea. Yi Min isn't just going to take his girl back. He is going to take everything. His money, his name, his legacy. Part 3 is the finale, and trust me, the revenge is going to be cold, calculated, and absolutely satisfying. Subscribe and turn on notifications because you do not want to miss the downfall of Liam Sterling.